We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. For this week, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Kurt Dalton with Cannabis.net.
Every week, Kurt and I get together to share some news from the cannabis industry. We throw in some comments and introduce our reporting staff from all over the country. Kurt, a big week for cannabis reform, huh?
We have international and within America, Jimmy.
It's incredible, isn't it? You got the UN descheduling cannabis, and then the House of Representatives in the United States will be voting on the MORE Act on Friday. There's a very good chance that the MORE Act will be voted on by the House, pass the House, and that kind of paves the way for legalization, but it does have to go to the Senate now, doesn't it, Kurt?
Yeah, we've talked about this, Jimmy. We put an article up on Cannabis.net. Why now? What's the Democratic strategy? You and I have reached out across the industry with not a really great abundance of firm answers, but there has to be something we don't know. And what if? I know we're going to get drilled for this, but what if it is going to pass the Senate? What if there's something worked out? And you're going to look at cannabis legalization, not even relying on the Georgia Senate races January 5th, but happening just by vote, within the next 30 days by the time it gets to the Senate. So fingers crossed that something big is about to happen.
As long as that turtle face guy is running things in the Senate, that MM guy from Kentucky, that Senator Mitch McConnell, I don't think this bill has the chance of anything to pass in the Senate. But that's how I feel. And I think it is reality. But one never knows politics in Washington, correct?
Yeah, and that's what everybody thinks, is there's no shot it gets past the Senate, so why do it? So let's flip it over. Like, what is going on and what do they know? And is it some sort of precursor to Biden's presidency that they need to get it voted on now so they can just add amendments later? Is it about the Georgia Senate race? Is it about taxation or making Republicans look bad, if you will, with such strong support? So it's all out there, but let's play the game.
Let's play the game. They'll vote it in and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, the United Nations vote followed recommendations from the World Health Organization that was back in January of 2019 that called for cannabis to be rescheduled. It was in a convention in 1961 that put cannabis into the most restrictive class internationally. And amazingly, this vote was as close as it gets. Among the 53 member states of the UN, 27 votes for and 25 against, with one abstention. And yes, the U.S. voted yes. It did absolutely recognize that cannabis has medical benefits, basically refuting this particular nation's Schedule I classification. The Green Market Report's Debra Borchardt has more.
Thanks, guys. This week, the United Nations has voted to remove cannabis from its classification as a dangerous drug. Now, Wednesday's vote does not clear UN member nations to legalize marijuana under the International Drug Control System, but for what it's worth, Canada and Uruguay have legalized the sale and use of cannabis for recreational purposes. This, though, is seen as a move that could jumpstart international cannabis businesses. Several companies reported earnings this week, but really the bigger news was the capital raising efforts we saw. Hydrofarm Holdings said it was launching an IPO to raise $118 million, but the over-allotment option could bring that to $136 million. The share are expected to price between $14 and $16, and they have applied to list those shares on the NASDAQ using the symbol HYFM. Ackrell SPAC Partners said it plans to raise $100 million for a SPAC that will primarily focus on the alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverage and wellness sectors, as well as hemp-based branded consumer goods. They also plan to list on the NASDAQ using the symbol ACKIU. And that's it for this week. I'm Debra Borchardt with the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
So remember when we thought that Mexico would be the next nation to legalize cannabis? And in fact, that was only last week, but now there's a bit of a snag. It seems that their government is in favor of decriminalization of possession of cannabis, but there is no way for the citizens of that country to grow it. So detractors are saying that while possessing weed might not be a crime anymore, but you will have to buy it from the state. Part of the legalization movement in the US, of course, is to give opportunities to those who are marginalized communities of color who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. Well, that is not part of the Mexican government's plan. So stay tuned to that, Kurt, as detractors are saying that all Mexico is doing is changing the address of prohibition.
Well, it's a money grab, obviously, and the Mexican government wants more than their fair share. But Canada started this way too, with provinces only selling and needing a government. Governments were going to distribute cannabis like liquor in Canada. So win the war, figure it out later. It's all positive steps forward, and it's a little disheartening sometimes when cannabis advocates, say, "Oh, the MORE Act doesn't go far enough." Yeah, get the touchdown and worry about the extra point. You can always add stuff. That we've seen in every state that's legalized. They get it, and then they go back and change the things they got wrong. And win the war, and then worry about some of those details you'd like to see later.
And Mexico is poised to be the largest country in the world that would legalize the cannabis plant. So I'm guessing at some point they'll look at the revenue that they're leaving out there and perhaps, or tax revenue that they're leaving out there, and perhaps change their minds.
Yeah, I think certainly Mexico in the sense of an exporter based on their price of labor, price of electricity, and their familiarity with exporting all the way from car parts to produce. Serious supplier, and their weather and their climate and where they are on longitude, latitude, absolutely a force when this thing gets a few years down the road and export.
Now, we'll see what happens. But back here in our home state of Massachusetts, the Cannabis Control Commission has finalized its new delivery opportunities for social equity applicants. Not all brick and mortar dispensaries are happy with this, but under these new rules, delivery companies would be allowed to buy from wholesalers and then resell to consumers. This is going to end up in court, Kurt. And the original Question 4 law that opened the adult use market in the Bay State did give special opportunities for those most impacted by the failed war on drugs. And now in reality, we know where it's heading, and those lawyers are licking their chops, don't you think?
Yeah, and David Rabinovich, our friend of the show, has been following this for years. And you and I talked to Bruce Linton about this. It's a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow if you're a few million in and you've got your license and you really want to take advantage, but it's the right thing to do. It needs to happen. And in the end, hopefully those applicants, make a profit as well as dispensaries. Dispensaries aren't going to go out of business for this. They just don't like the, quote, unfair competition given to these applicants. But that's why they're SC and EE applicants. They need to be given an advantage based on historical facts of the drug war, as well as giving everybody an opportunity in this new industry.
I would think that maybe as we go state to state, there may be some way to ease some of the regulations or compliance issues that the brick and mortar dispensaries have to deal with, like getting two different background checks on their employees, whether they're medical and recreation. It's the same employee, yet they have to pay twice to get these background checks. I'm not sure that really favors the brick and mortar dispensaries out there. Maybe they could give them a break on that. I don't know. Just one little item that could soften the blow, if you will, and the impact of this delivery license on brick and mortars. You think that might happen?
It is, again, money grab, right? Who's getting the money for all these background checks? Who's creating all these needless double entendres and things that you have to do? Oh, what do you know? The state gets the money. So hopefully it gets streamlined. Not every state is it's like pulling teeth in Massachusetts. Every single turn. Other states are not like that. It's going much smoother. There's much more acceptance. Governor Baker has never been a big fan of it, but here comes the tax revenue. So open up.
Let's see. Hey, Kurt, did you know that Amazon is likely to get involved with the delivery and sale of CBD?
Yeah, that's only a matter of time. You saw they rolled out their prescription finally. They had bought that startup a few years ago. They're going to start doing prescription drugs at discounts, so you stay in their system. And if CBD is part of that pipeline, doctor approved and legal, absolutely. You're going to see customers also grouped together, and it's going to be CBD bundles at the bottom of your order. So not a surprise.
And predictions, by the way, for that industry, the CBD industry, hemp industry, is to grow to $7 billion by 2025. That forecast was unveiled at MJ BizCon during the Hemp Industry Forum. MJBizCon is always the largest convention of the cannabis industry, but after canceling it, the in-person event convention center in Las Vegas, well, they opened up virtually this week with their CEO, Chris Walsh, giving opening remarks and Whole Foods CEO, John Mackey, delivering the keynote address. Now, Kurt, Chris asked John why, after years of courting John Mackey to deliver the keynote at MJBizCon, he finally accepted this year. Sure enough, he explained that the time was right. Another sign of moving toward acceptance and legalization, don't you think?
Absolutely. And all these little steps, whether it's our state ballots that went through on 5 states, the UN vote, it's a boom outside of America for this. This is the green light for a lot of countries who aren't reliant on the US financial system. So you're talking Southeast Asia, Europe, even Eastern Europe. They're going to go, this is it. This is the green light. This is there. We can do it now. So it's going to create revenue. COVID's hitting around the world, especially in poorer countries. They need this. And you're going to see a lot of CBD and cannabis coming online. It won't include the United States or the US banking system, but it's going to be there. And that's just more pressure on the US to legalize. So it's all good.
Let's see what happens. It's a historic time, and we're right in the middle of it. And speaking of history and right in the middle of it, that's exactly where the Vote Pro podcast guys are. Let's get our DC report from Phil Adams down in our nation's capital. Phil?
Hi, folks. Phil Adams with Vote Pro podcast, here with this week's Weed Talk News DC report. The Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment, and Expungement Act reached the floor of the House of Representatives this week. The bill to legalize cannabis federally cleared the House Rules Committee on Wednesday after the committee ruled by voice vote to close the bill to further amendments. While some lawmakers are questioning the timing of the vote, particularly while a COVID relief bill continues to languish, others, including Democrat Earl Blumenauer of Oregon, who presides over the debate, are hailing it as, quote, an historic moment. The MORE Act will be given 1 day of debate before proceeding to a floor vote by the full House, which is expected on Friday. In a related story, a coalition of conservative advocacy groups are stepping forward to support passage of the MORE Act. In a letter to House leadership, representatives of the Competitive Enterprise Institute, R Street Institute, the Institute for Liberty, and the Taxpayers Protection Alliance urged lawmakers to approve the MORE Act. The letter notes that all but 2 states have either legalized or decriminalized cannabis and calls on the House to respect the will of the people and end the, quote, dual legal status of cannabis. In yet another legal challenge to the Drug Enforcement Agency's cannabis policy, a scientist is suing to compel the agency to take action on his application to produce cannabis for research. Lyle Craker, a researcher at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, has filed a suit with the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts, calling on the DEA either to approve his application to be a registered cannabis cultivator or to deny it so he can appeal. Craker originally applied in 2001 and was ultimately denied. He then reapplied in 2016 after the DEA announced a plan to begin approving more cannabis growers. To date, however, no new growers have been approved, leaving the University of Mississippi with a monopoly on federally authorized cannabis cultivation. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
Here's another item we can discuss, Kurt, and I think it's rather interesting. You know, the cannabis industry is really restricted from advertising in traditional media, TV, radio, newspapers, but it's okay to put up billboards. That's true here in Massachusetts, and you would think it would be okay in California, but not anymore. The Bureau of Cannabis Control in California has been told it overstepped its authority about allowing highway billboards. This ruling comes after a lawsuit filed by a father who was concerned about these kinds of signs and messaging to his daughter and his son. Kurt, what do you think it is? What do you think about billboards and advertising companies that are involved with the cannabis industry?
I think in a place like California, they got a little risque and pushed the limits on some of the stuff you see from like Ignite and some of the models they use. That certainly didn't help commingling, sex with it. But, to respect that father, I mean, we're doing a cannabis show, we're pro-cannabis, but there are people who aren't and don't think it should be for children or children should see it. So, I think until we see federal legalization, you're going to have to keep a lid on it and go to cannabis sites like cannabis.net to get some eyeballs.
There you go. Absolutely. And now it's time to go north to Maine to Rye Russell, our Maine Man from Weedbudzradio. Rye?
Hey friends, Rye Russell here from Weedbudzradio, back with another Maine Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Let's get started with the numbers, and the sales are in. In a press release, Maine's Office of Marijuana Policy shared the preliminary sales for the first month of adult use cannabis in the state of Maine. Retailers saw a total of 21,194 transactions during this first 31 days, which grossed over $1.4 million in revenue. Out of that volume, about 76% of the products sold included smokable flower, showing us that there is a real opportunity for edibles and other infused products. Well, the season of giving has kicked off here in the Pine Tree State, and we saw a special collaboration between Cure Leaf's Auburn, Maine location and Caden's Kitchen Food Pantry with an $8,000 donation from Cure Leaf, allowing the pantry to hand out over 400 grocery store gift cards to help Maine families that are in need. With reportedly few businesses this year able to help or make donations due to challenges brought by the pandemic, a representative from Cure Leaf said that they recognize how hard this year has been on the community, and they were grateful to be in a position to help. This has been your Maine Cannabis Report. I'm Rye Russell with Weedbudzradio, reporting for Weed Talk News.
Another country that's trying to shed its image internationally is Colombia. The Senate in that country approved the first attempt at regulating the use of cannabis by adults by a vote of 11-3. There's still a long way to go, but the idea by these Colombian senators is to break up the illegal trade and change the image of that country. Any shot, Kurt?
Yeah, unless Netflix is taking down Scarface, no.
Hey, Colombian weed has dominated the American market, or at least it did back in the day, let's say 70s and 80s, and I'm talking about the illegal trade. But there's always a chance that they could actually go legit, go legal, and Colombian exports could go up. Is that going to happen?
Oh, I mean, they've done such a good job of stopping the cocaine trade over the last 20 years down there. Yeah, no, Jimmy, sorry. Unless cocaine is stopped sold in America, I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing movies about the Colombian trade and how to break it up and all that stuff.
Well, it's a strange new world, that's for sure. In the meantime, not strange, north of the border, Solomon Israel, who's been off for a few weeks to move, is back with us. So let's go north of the border for our Canadian Cannabis Report from Solomon Israel.
I'm Solomon Israel from Marijuana Business Daily International, and this is the Weed Talk News Canadian Cannabis Report. Marijuana producer CannTrust is making a comeback attempt. The company had its federal licenses suspended last year after being caught growing cannabis in unlicensed parts of its facility. Now, CannTrust has those licenses back and says it will resume sales to Canada's recreational market this month. CannTrust remains under creditor protection. Zenabis Global says it has a buyer for an unwanted cultivation facility in Delta, British Columbia. The facility appears to have sold for about half its original asking price. A number of major Canadian cannabis firms have closed down production sites in the past year as they reconcile excess production capacity with market demand. That trend includes Aurora Cannabis. This week, Aurora announced it's indefinitely pausing operations at its Aurora Sun greenhouse in Medicine Hat, Alberta. That greenhouse was supposed to be one of the largest cannabis production sites in the world, but only a fraction of the facility was ever used. You can read those stories and more at mjbizdaily.com. I'm Solomon Israel for Marijuana Business Daily.
Two more stories to end Weed Talk News for this week. You've heard of the Seniors Tour of Golf, of course. Well, how about the Boxing Legends Tour? Sure enough, cannabis entrepreneur, former heavyweight champ, Mike Tyson got back into the ring for the first time in 15 years to fight another former champ in Roy Jones Jr. It was an 8-round exhibition for the 54-year-old Tyson against the 51-year-old Jones. Tyson even admitted that he had smoked weed before and after the fight. Did that stop people from spending $49.95 for the right to view this fight? No. How about 1.2 million people bought the fight? Kurt, did you?
I did not watch it, but anytime a 54-year-old can smoke a big fatty and go 8 rounds of legit boxing and then smoke again, it's got to be pro-positive, because I bet there's a lot of 54-year-old guys wondering, if Mike Tyson could do that and then go out and perform, maybe it's worth a shot here.
Perform what? Okay, let's not go there. Let's talk about this last story. We all recognize that the end of life can be a very painful experience for many in hospice or in the hospital. In Colorado, Jeremiah Pollock decided to drive from Denver to Chicago to be at the bedside of his grandmother, who was dying of cancer and had decided to forego any more chemotherapy treatment. One of her last wishes, to get high with her grandson. Kurt, you talk about end-of-life bonding. That's kind of a nice story, isn't it?
Oh, to all my future grandkids out there, please save this tape. And I don't know if I'll smoke it with you, but bring lots of edibles and tigs for those final hours. Yep. Perfect.
There you go. Well, that'll do it for a perfect end for Weed Talk News for another week. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Kurt Dalton from Cannabis.net.
Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Weed Talk Now, Weed Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, Cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media, supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge, and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.